Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to my channel. I'm here to share my process of learning to live more consciously. I'm hoping to inspire you in your process, share my experiences, and hopefully we can connect along the way and in the path of living more conscious lives. I believe our thoughts directly affect our reality, and I'd like to share how I've learned to work with these thought forms over the course of time. However, I feel that it is most important to go all the way back to the beginning for me of the time when I was young and naive and carefree, and I believed everything that everybody told me about the world and how it worked. You remember that time for yourself? Did any of us? Now, some of us had the fortune or misfortune of not having had that experience ever, and you might have started right at the place that I'm about to share now, which is the point in my life at which everything shattered. Now, for those of you that have had really traumatic childhoods, you may have had this happen much earlier in your life and come to your awakening much sooner. That, especially the younger generation, I feel like the younger generation has a lot of realization that, adults are just kind of full of crap. A lot of this is crap, but I was a true believer. I grew up in the church. I believed everything I was taught. I believed, and the reason I believed it is because I was having authentic experiences with the divine. And I didn't understand that those experiences could stand alone outside of the constructs of a specific religion. But I do now, 20 years later. But that process, that time at which everything came shattered in my life, I remember feeling like the scaffolding in my mind had just disintegrated, and I didn't have any place to hang my beliefs, my thoughts. I didn't know what was up, what was down, left, right, wrong. I just didn't know because I was depressed. I was confused, and honestly, I didn't care if I lived or died. And I think coming to that place, now that I look back on it 15 years ago and have some perspective, I can say that it was the beginning of me being able to open up to who I really was. And it was the process of realizing that the people that I trusted to tell me the truth aren't perfect for whatever reason, whether it's my parents, whether it's the schools, teachers, institutions, religions, government, all of these things. I'm not assigning blame. This isn't necessarily an orchestrated, situation. This could just be people aren't perfect, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt about that, although at the time it was exceedingly painful. But the process brought me into a realization that I could not rely on things outside of myself to save me or to teach me. Now, I could take information and ideas from other people and other places, but ultimately they had to sync with who I recognized myself to be. And so I learned that I had to take responsibility for myself. This means taking responsibility for my life. This means taking responsibility for my thoughts, my beliefs, my actions, and my values. Now, I think this is really important. I think this step is really, really, really important. And I will say that I began this process at a specific time, but it's like a spiral, and I keep coming back and back and back and back. I am constantly learning about myself, who I am, and what I believe more and more and more constantly. But I remember the beginning of this process when I was so confused and I just didn't know, again, left from right, right from wrong, up from down. And I had met a new friend in my life. This is Nagadine, by the way, my soul companion, my darling. And this person said to me, well, what are your values? Dear friend in my life, he had an extreme influence over me in terms of really helping me. And I was like, my values? What do you mean my values? Huh? I don't know what my values are. I know what I was told my values should be, but what do I truly value? And what he said is, well, think about your life and what you put your energy towards. What directions do you put your energy towards, or your actions towards? And your actions in your life will show you what you truly value, because there's a difference. And so that's the process of starting to recognize my actions lining up with my thoughts. And it was starting to make this connection between the conscious and the subconscious, because maybe I might think a certain thing and do another thing. For instance, how many of you have been on a diet and you've decided, oh, I'm gonna only eat salads for the next year of my life, and then all of a sudden you're like stuffing cake in your mouth. That would be me. Frosting, though, the frosting on the cake, that's exciting. Love frosting. But if you are not connected with your actions and your thoughts, then there's a disconnect. So knowing your mind and who you are and being solid in who you are, and so beginning this process. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of tools that help different people. So tools that really helped me at the time, I had part of the shattering for me was about religion. And so I wasn't about to find these tools within the context of any kind of religious circumstance. That was all suspect to me. And so I found tools through, I found this particular podcaster who was an atheist, and he taught about morality, secular morality, and this idea that we are sovereign beings, that morality is based on the idea that I am responsible for myself, you are responsible for yourself, and I am not allowed to force you. So the point at which my rights end is the point at which your rights begin, right? So I can have a conversation with you, I can argue with you, I can't punch you in the face, and I can't shoot you, right? Because you are your sovereign person, and I'm not allowed to do that. And so that would extend to personal property. I'm not allowed to just walk into the house that you own or onto the land that you own and just shoot you, kill you, and take your things. That is the morality of that I found. This idea that we have the freedom to pursue our goals and our lives, and that we do not have the right to stop other people from this process. Now, that was very helpful for me because it gave me a framework. And I needed that. My scaffolding had shattered. I needed to have some kind of framework, and that made complete sense to me. And it aligned with what I came to find that my values were. So other things that helped me were learning about this process called the internal family systems theory, which is basically the idea that within us are many parts and that we have thoughts connected to these different parts. And so that really helped me, starting to learn how to listen to different parts, starting to recognize that those thoughts were connected to experiences, parts of myself that maybe felt hurt in certain areas or were holding me back because they were afraid of certain things. And as I began to work with that, I started to recognize that those unconscious fears or traumas were sabotaging me in certain areas. So it's this process of learning yourself. Some people find it through meditation because they're able to sit and observe their thoughts without being connected to them. I think, for me, it took me 10 years before I was able to really even consider the idea of meditation. I'm just starting to work with meditation now. I found a lot of help through chanting. That was a huge part because I sing and I connect with music. Chanting was a really big way for me to quiet my mind. But I digress. So the very beginning of starting to recognize that we have a mind and it thinks these thoughts, and that not all of the thoughts in our mind come from us. And that was really big, and so accepting and recognizing that I had been programmed. And every single one of us, if you're watching this video, you've been programmed by one thing or another. We've been programmed by our parents. We've been programmed by our religions. We've been programmed by our society. We've been programmed by our schools. We've been programmed by religion. We've been programmed by the media. We've been programmed by the government. Now, I'm not saying that all programming is wrong. We need to understand the parameters of society. We need to understand ways that are acceptable to act and not to act within, this particular physical reality. Those things are important, but, an example of programming might be the idea of walking outside. You walk outside in the wintertime to grab something and you hear this thought in your mind, put on your coat or you're going to catch a cold. It's just an innocent thing that, perhaps a grandma or a parent or somebody said to you 100 times, 1,000,000 times growing up. You just took it in and didn't think twice about it, whether it's true or not, right? Okay, scientifically, logically, it takes a virus or a bacteria or a germ to give us a cold and but programming thoughts are worth exploring. And what happened to me when I was at this place of beginning all over again is that I was really unpacking the mental constructs, particularly for me around religion and then eventually around government. What happens when you start to have conversations with other people is that we have these emotional triggers. And when I started to recognize is that I think our thoughts are, it's almost like if we have a thought, in our mind, here's the thought. And then it's like it's encased in a protective layer of what I would call an emotional trigger. And so it's like a hot button. So if you start to get close to this thought in your mind, all of a sudden you react with rage and anger and how could you say such a thing? How can you do? And suddenly we're caught up in this rush of chemicals releasing from our brains. We're caught up in the dynamic that's happening with the conversation, and we're all angry and triggered, and we are avoiding the thought. And we're avoiding having to go into that thought and really analyze the meat and potatoes of that thought. Because if you have a thought or a belief, in my opinion, what I was able to do was to use my logic and to say, well, if this thought doesn't stand up to scrutiny, then is it worth me believing? Is it worth my belief? And if I have a belief, then and I do apply scrutiny to it and it shatters, even if it's difficult to have that happen, even if it's difficult that a thought that I believed is suddenly now realizing it's not true, wouldn't you rather know than not know? And what I can say now, 15, 20 years down the road, is that in being able to let go of some of the surface things, I've been able to go deeper and circle back to where I went through this shattering of my process of religion. And for me, it began with the idea of homosexuality. So I grew up in the 80s and the 90s in the Christian church. I was taught, marriage is between a man and a woman, and homosexuality is wrong, except that I went to public school, and well, I had lots of gay and lesbian friends, and I just couldn't care less if a person is gay or lesbian. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. I think love is wonderful. I think love is beautiful. I think the world needs more love, and I could not understand why religion was so focused on this issue, because it didn't matter to me, and quite frankly, I didn't feel like it mattered to God at all. I really just felt it in my bones that it didn't matter. And that for me was the seed of starting to recognize that there's a difference between this heart of love that connects us and that feeds us, feeling this divine love and light, and if you find that through the Christ consciousness, if you find that through a personal relationship with Jesus, if you find it through a relationship with another person, this I think that this energy of love is going to come to us however we can relate to it, because it is so much bigger than we can imagine, and it's not limited by us as humans, just so much bigger than we can conceive. And so, but I had to deprogram. And that process of deprogramming was intense, it was emotional, and it was worth it, because I am so thankful for the perspective that I have now. But, not everybody wants to go into that hard stuff. So, you start to find a trigger, and then you're all of a sudden it's big and it's an emotional and it's difficult, and you feel like you're just going to and so you just avoid it, and you avoid it, and you avoid it because you don't want to go there, because you're afraid of what's going to happen if you push through. But what I have found is this process of avoiding and being triggered is the most difficult part, because once you push through it and you move through it, all of a sudden you're able to integrate all of these parts back in, and it is so exciting. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a life coach. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you how to do these things, as much as I'm just sharing what my experiences were. And that is the point of this channel. I just want to share my experiences, because when I was going through this process, I felt isolated, I felt lonely, I felt insane, and I didn't know how to connect with other people, because most other people are not on this journey. I believe if you're watching these videos, you're resonating with what's being said, and you're meant to be here and a part of this conversation. So, when you feel that cognitive dissonance, I encourage you to dive in and to not be afraid of yourself, because that's you. That's you. Who else is going to go into these parts of yourself? Who else is going to go there? And don't be afraid of what you're going to find, because that's you in there. And you knowing yourself is the best thing that you can do for yourself and for humanity. And it's the first step in this whole process, because everything else filters through the process of you and your sovereignty, and you knowing your mind, and knowing who you are, and knowing what you believe. Even if everything you believed has just shattered and you don't know, then cling to one thing. For me, it was love. Okay. I'm really, I was at this point and I thought, I'm really confused. I feel really lost. I feel really sad. I feel like I want to give up. But you know what? I remember, sitting outside on the porch. Now for me, at the beginning of this process, cannabis actually was a part of this process for me. I was about 24, 25. I had never smoked growing up, but at this point, it really was medicine for what were panic attacks for me, and helped me to connect in a different way with the world around me, and helped me to get outside of these boxes. And so I remember at this point in my life feeling just like I wanted to give up. I remember I had smoked a little bit and I was sitting outside and I was just so upset, and I was like this, and then I just heard the chirping of birds, and I heard the talking of crickets, and I started to come back into like, okay, I have a body. This is real. I can touch my body. Okay. And I looked up and I saw this apple tree. And I was like, okay. I stood up. I walked over to the apple tree. I put my hands on the apple tree. It was like, I can touch this. This is real. Just orienting myself to anything. This is real right here and right now. And that was the beginning. Okay. So all of that being said, I will say that once this process begins, then what happens is that we start to become really open to lots and lots of new ideas, and it can become really, really exciting. And that is going to be the next video that I will do. Right now, I just wanted to talk about the beginning. So tell me if you have ever had an experience in your life, or multiple experiences, where you came to realize something that you believed with all of your heart suddenly was a lie. What have those experiences been for you? And how did you handle it? And how did you get through it? And if you are going through that experience now, reach out to me, send me a message, comment here. Let's start to create community and start to connect with each other, because that is the point of this channel. I'm not trying to be any kind of anything. I'm just a fellow traveler sharing my experiences. You can find me on Facebook at Let's Make Wonderland. If you type that in the Facebook search, it should pop up with my page, Wonderland's Creations, and that's a place to connect. And I do believe that our thoughts create reality. I believe that our conscious and unconscious beliefs create our reality. And I believe that as we start to work together, connecting with each other and encouraging each other, that we can start to co-create some really beautiful things. We create our reality very practically, because thoughts turn into actions, and also, in a more esoteric sense, but it's measurable in my experience. And so that is why you'll find other parts of my channel where I have music, because I try, when I'm singing, when I'm putting music out there, I'm putting my energy behind creating a thought form that I am hoping will assist other people and myself through this process. So, yeah, it's wonderful to be with you on this journey. It's difficult and also wonderful to be alive. Let's just take a minute to breathe. Connect. I open my heart. I share that loving heart energy with everybody watching this video. Feel free to receive that energy, and feel free to connect in with all the other people that have ever or ever will watch this video. And as we connect, let's just share this thought form that we can do this, and we can encourage each other on this process. Much love, many blessings, and I will be back again soon.